and welcome to Game and Read. I'm Erin.
My name is Peter.
And we are here for a Friday Reads episode. We're going to tell you what we are reading and playing into this weekend, give you recommendation. Maybe it'll be books and games. Maybe it'll be TV shows. You never know.
And you have forgotten, we also recap what we played last weekend.
We do. We recap. We read forward. We recommend. My Friday reads last week was Long Bright River by Liz Moore. This is a story about two sisters. One, Mickey, is a cop in Philadelphia. The other, Casey, is a sex worker and addicted to drugs, also in Philadelphia. This book was so sad. I think it was a really beautiful book. I definitely was engaged and interested in what was going on, but it is very intense. It deals with things like drug addiction, violence against women, trauma of all kinds, family trauma, partner trauma, child trauma. It's pretty intense. I would easily get overwhelmed, so I had to take breaks, and I read a dumb book in between that had no stakes, so that it was just like a brain break. But I loved the characters were heartfelt. They weren't characters I would say that I loved them as characters, but I think that the author did a really good job of kind of giving depth to her characters. And I think that the setting was well done. It's set in Philadelphia. Mickey and Casey kind of grew up in poverty with their grandmother, and a lot of their family is still sort of in the lower middle class, doesn't have a lot. The ones who kind of made it went out to the suburbs, but still are, it's not the nice suburbs. It's just the next level up from crappy. So it definitely gives this vibe of sort of just, there's a lot of sadness sort of everywhere, which I think added to the intensity. But there were these pockets of joy and pockets of family and community, positive family and community. And so I thought it was well done. The other thing I really liked about the story is that it is a non-linear narrative. So it goes back and forth. I talked about this a little bit last week, but it goes back and forth between present day and past. And Mickey is the main perspective that you see. And so it's interesting to see the ways that the past informs the present, informs the past. And so I just thought that was a nicely executed, non-linear storytelling, because sometimes switching back and forth can be tedious, or you kind of go, why? What is the point of this? But I think Liz Moore did a good job of sort of moving back and forth through time. I'd say my biggest complaint is that I felt like there were some parts of the book where the author couldn't decide if it was a murder mystery detective novel story, or if it was about family relationships. So Mickey and Casey are really the center of this story, but it also is taking place in a time when there is a serial killer, in the neighborhood, in Mickey's precinct, preying in particular on sex workers. And it's sometimes the mystery seemed like the main thing, but then sometimes the relationships were the main thing, and it flip-flopped. And I just think that it would have been stronger had the author, Liz Moore, leaned into one more than the other. I almost felt like each distracted from the other at times. And I wasn't shocked by the twist.
So the mystery wasn't satisfying, but you feel like the side elements weren't all that satisfying either.
Yeah, or that the mystery was just fine. The relationships were just fine. Neither one of them was like absolutely stellar. But I'd recommend it if you like intense. I know I just sat here going it's sad and intense and
also not that great, but
No.
it's fine.
no, I didn't say it wasn't that great. I just said,
Well, you said the mystery wasn't that great, and you said the family relationships weren't that great.
excuse me, can we roll the tape? I think I said they were just fine, which is different than not that great.
No, I think those are interchangeable.
Not in Erin's world of books.
Come on down to Erin's World of Books.
That would not be my bookstore name. I don't know what my bookstore name would be.
No, that's my bookstore name.
Oh, Peter owns Erin's World of Books.
Yeah, I'm stealing your book valor.
This is not acceptable.
My game for last week was the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, the HD remake of those two now classic games of the PS1 N64 era. And I've played a lot of these games since they came out Thursday evening. I've probably put in a good 10 to 15 hours, I'd say would be a appropriate amount to guesstimate there. I've played through all the kind of main career stuff. I've done multiplayer. I've done some just collecting of things through the levels.
You've made a character with an interesting face.
Yes, and I'm going to say my verdict on this game is that if you enjoyed Tony Hawk 1 and or 2 back then, you will really like this game now, assuming you still like that gameplay. So if you've been away from the series for a long time, which most people have because they haven't had a good game in the series in a long time, this is the one to come back to if you are able to pick it up. I really recommend it. I think they do a great job of staying both true to the original stuff while adding some more modern game elements and making it look really pretty and overall just making a really satisfying skating game.
What's the biggest difference that you've noticed between... I mean, obviously, the engines are different because you went from PS1 to PS4, but what's the, major difference, or is there one, between the original and the remaster?
I would say things are a little bit more precise feeling. It's still not 100%. Like, you can land on a slight angle and be like, oh, yeah, that was like a perfect ramp down, where it's like, no, that one, you would have just busted your face there. But that's fine, because that's what you want in these games, because if they were super technical and precise, you couldn't get the big, ridiculous combos you want. You couldn't, it wouldn't be as, the kind of semi-cartoony fun that is the Tony Hawk games. So I would say they feel a little bit more fluid than the original two, just because of the improved engine and graphics. You don't need to worry about the rest of the screen loading in as you skate towards it in the larger levels. It's just all there.
You don't miss getting the hallway
seeing
of
trees
forever.
appear through just a cloud in the distance because you're just in the middle of a big level. Yeah, no, I don't miss that. But I would say, and then also the addition of some of the tricks that they added in later games make this a much more playable game. So you can do those bigger combos because you now have the full manual abilities. You've got reverts, things that really allow you to make those big combos that were a lot trickier in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 that didn't have the manual at all. So it was a lot harder to get big high scores and big combos in that game. But they're all there. However, if you're a purist and you want to play Tony Hawk 1 exactly like you remember, you can turn those controls on.
Can you really?
Yes. So you can put on the exact mapping and trick selection of the original two games if you want.
That's a why
but that's just an option.
It makes sense though, because I'm sure there are people who are purists who are like, no, I want to play Tony Hawk 1 and 2. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. But I would say I really like this, and I really like that a lot of games of this generation, the well-known ones that still hold up kind of well, are getting these nice big HD remakes. Things like the Crash Bandicoot and the Spyro games, now Tony Hawk. It's there's a good collection growing of these kind of early 64-bit polygonal games that are a little hard to go back to just because of the resolution. Going back to some of these games on an actual CRT TV gives me headaches now. And so seeing them in like this pretty HD where it's like, yeah, they would have made it look like this if they had HD graphics back then, is really nice. And so I really appreciate what they did with this game. I would say a few points that I would knock it on. The interface is a little too menu-y. There's a lot of different tabs of things. They make it look kind of like it's a freemium game where it's like a bunch of stuff you can buy. Thing is, it's all in-game currency, so they haven't tried to charge me. Like, I haven't bought like a special shirt or anything with money. But they just really kind of make it look almost like, here's this menu and this menu and this menu. And I think that's just kind of how, you know, the downsides of modern user interface.
I was going to ask, do you think that it's this like layers of menu because that's what people are used to with some games now? Or do you think that it was just like, we don't know what else to do, or this is just easier to like menu it out?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of how they decided to include, like, and all the features I think are useful in some way, where it's like, here's a thing where you can unlock stuff with the in-game currency, and here's the menu where you can customize your guy or pick which skater you want to have right now. But it's just like, I don't love it. I don't know if there's a better solution to it, so I'm just going to be like, that wasn't my favorite, and sometimes it's a little tricky to navigate where you have to like, okay, pan over to that tab. Oh no, I need that's like a sub menu in this tab for the thing I'm looking for.
That's annoying.
And all you're trying to do is like customize your skater and then get back to skating. But it's not too bad. It's just a little bleh. Bleh. That's the word. The other thing, so the online mode, so they have all the original like multiplayer modes that those games had. So there's like the score attack and the trick attack and the graffiti mode. And you can play those all online, which is great. They just throw you in a lobby and you can play like they've got a chill mode and a competitive mode. I don't know what competitive mode gets you. I played both and they seem to be identical. So something slightly different. I don't know if they're ranking me behind the scenes or if I got first place, I'd win something. I never got first place on competitive, so I don't know, but they're all kind of quick. The longest session would take 2 minutes, and a couple of them are needlessly short. Like the first person to get a 100,000 point combo wins. It's like that's going to take 10 seconds with experienced players, and it often does. And so that's really frustrating because you're like, you know, unless you get it, it's just like, oh, I was so close.
It's like you don't even have a shot.
Yeah, no.
I've watched you do that mode, and it's like you're doing these combos and tricks, and then all of a sudden it's over. And I'm like, wait, what happened?
And here's the thing. If you don't land a combo, it just says you have 0 points. If you're still working on your first combo and you're at like 99,000 and somebody hits 100,000, it just says you have 0 points because you didn't actually land that combo.
That sucks.
I know, it blows. And so I'm just, you know, a little annoyed with that. I would love if they developed this a little bit more because I really like the ones where it's like, okay, 2 minutes, get the highest combo you can. That type I prefer, where they give you a set amount of time. Much more enjoyable, much more fun. And then it gets a little like, oh, I'm down to my last 30 seconds. You see the scores on the side, and you try and get something big. But, you know, I like that they did it. It's great. And I like that there's online leaderboards for every like single session of the game, of the different maps, as well as speed runs of each level. So it'll be like, okay, how quickly can you get all the achievements in this one level? Go. I've only done it on a couple levels, but it's really fun to just see that time tick up. And they just give you as long as you need until you get everything, and then you get stuck on a leaderboard because you did it in 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Good job. So overall, I think it's a really enjoyable game, and I hope for the future that they take this engine and all the stuff they put into and make some new maps. I would love to see them port some of the maps and achievements of the other games. I don't necessarily think they need to do full remakes. They kind of can be hit or miss with regards to quality, but they all have some good maps in them, and I would love to see those available in the future through DLC or something. But I would also love to see somebody, you know, creative actually lead this game series into something new that isn't just remakes of the old stuff.
My Friday Reads this week is At the Wolf's Table by Rosella Postorino. Postorino. That sounds like a cereal. Am I
Postorino.
crazy?
So that's, well, if you're the sheriff from
That's what I'm
Thimbleweed
thinking
Park,
of.
and you're talking about your favorite cereal brands, you'd be like, well, General Mills-Arino and Postorino.
Okay, I knew I was reading this and I was like, why does Postorino sound so familiar? It's because I'm thinking of Thimbleweed Park. Anyway, At the Wolf's Table is by Rosella Postorino. It is
She's Italian.
She is Italian, actually.
I know. No, I know she is. I've started listening to the audiobook.
Yeah, so the reason this is my Friday Reads and this week is that it is our book club book for the month of September. We picked this one. I wanted to read it anyway. I'd actually heard of it, so it's perfect. But it is a historical fiction set in the 1940s in Germany. The main character is Rosa. She has moved from Berlin to this like country-ish town, and she gets chosen to be one of Hitler's food tasters. So basically Hitler is convinced someone's going to poison him, so he makes women eat his food first and see if they die or get poisoned.
Right, she just kind of gets conscripted into this.
Yeah, she's literally, that's why I said chosen. I guess you put big
I'd say
quotes.
coerced.
I'd say big quotes on chosen, coerced, conscripted unwillingly. But she's taken every single day to this lunchroom with like 10 other women, and they all have to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day and hope that they don't get poisoned. So I am enjoying it so far. I have lots of thoughts, and I'm not even done with it. So I know both book club and next week's Friday Reads will have lots of good discussion. But I do really like that it is a translated book. Like Peter, you mentioned the author is Italian, like legit Italian from Italy. And the translation I am reading is done by a Chicago translator into English. So it is not originally written in English, which I don't read a ton of books in translation. I read some, but not a ton. So it's always nice to read one.
Now, I have one question, and since I'm also reading this for our book group, the role of food taster, just as a concept, is a little funny to me. I think it makes sense in the following scenario. Say you're a king and you've got your designated food taster person. If I were the king and I thought somebody was actually going to poison me, I would want to watch this guy eat the food before I eat it. Whereas they have these women, and I'm not that far in it, I'm at the very beginning, basically in a room, and then they tell them to eat a bunch of food.
But there are, like, the Nazis are in there with them. Like, the Nazis are watching them.
Right. I'm just saying, like, if I was as paranoid as people often say Hitler was towards the end, I feel like I would also want to be like, I want to watch them eat. Because if I were then an assassin with a vial of poison, I'd try and get it in the hands of one of these food tasters.
That's
Or, like, on
fair.
their hands to, like, dab it on something. Be like, oh, it's all clean. But the food taster put the poison in it.
But the food tasters don't touch the food that goes to Hitler.
Then why would they taste the food? It doesn't matter. Like, if they aren't eating the off the plate that Hitler is eating, what's the point of having them taste it? So basically, if I poison a bowl of soup, and then, or if I think there's poison in a bowl of soup, I'm going to have you sip the soup before I sip the soup.
But you're going to sip the same soup?
Yes. That's the whole point of a food taster. Because they're not putting down blankets of poison. You got to be very precise with your poison.
Well, I don't know.
Also, why can't these Nazis just watch in the kitchen? If they're all loyal and not going to poison Hitler, why do they need a food taster?
I don't know.
I know. This
I have
is
no
my
answers
whole thing.
to these questions.
I'm curious, and hopefully next week I'll have some answers about the role of food taster and why that bothers me in some way. Just die. be a man and die of poison. My game for this Friday is a game I've been meaning to try for a little bit, and I've finally gotten around to it. And that is Donut County. It is designed almost exclusively by Ben Esposito and published by Annapurna Interactive. It is it's a mobile game. It's also on consoles. It's kind of on everything. It's a little, fairly short experience in which you are a raccoon who uses a kind of a magical hole he has control over with a tablet to suck up different parts of the town that you're in, Donut County.
Now, is he sucking things up on purpose?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. So he's purposely sucking things up in the town with his magical hole.
Yeah, well, I'm not certain yet, but raccoons they're the little bandits. They steal
tricksy
stuff, so he just has a special tool to suck stuff up. And the reason I picked this game was because I was just looking for something simple, light, fun, short. It's been on something I've been wanting to play for a while, and it's very similar to a game I played a few weeks ago, Katamari Damacy, in which it's kind of a cutesy game about causing mass destruction to an enjoyable town.
This is a weird theme that I just now am noticing of games that are like cute and adorable and destroy the world.
Right.
Or a portion of the world.
Some are tongue-in-cheek about it, like Katamari Damacy or Donut County, and then others are much more on the nose, like the duo of games Destroy All Humans.
Wait, you're telling me that is about destroying all humans?
Yes. Although I can't say it holds up as well as Katamari Damacy. But this is a game I'm going to be playing, looking forward to it, and I think it will be a good time.
My recommendation this week is the Dublin Murder Squad series from Tana French. Fall. It is fall, or it's almost fall. September is fall.
September 21st is the first day of fall.
Whatever. It's like 65 degrees here in Chicago, and it's gray. I consider this fall. Anyway, fall makes me want to read murder mysteries. Always. I like murder mysteries all the time, but fall is just great for like creepy books or murdery books or good, thick mysteries. And I think that the Dublin Murder Squad series is probably my favorite of these like mystery series. So it is currently 6 books, though I believe another one is coming out in 2021, maybe. I don't know. New one's coming out, and I'm very excited. But they are all set in Dublin, and they all follow the murder squad. So the unique thing about this series of books is that they are not... you don't have to read them in any sort of order.
Non-sequential.
Thank you. They are non-sequential, and each main character is a side character in another book. And so there's this thread that pulls them together that you recognize characters across books, and they're all members of the murder squad in Dublin, the police force. But they each focus on a different person, and you learn about that person. And so as you read, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of these books, you get to know the characters in really interesting ways, but you can read them in any order. So I love them all, but my very favorite is the likeness. This features Cassie, who is a detective, and Cassie has a doppelganger in Dublin who turns up murdered. So Cassie goes undercover as the murdered woman to try and solve the murder of the woman who's dead, who looks like Cassie, who Cassie is undercover as. It's just great. I love it. It's just sort of like a WTF, what is happening, but in the best kind of way. And I think Tana French does a great job of giving you atmosphere and giving you twists and good mysteries, and there's always murder, and it's just fantastic set of books.
My recommendation for this week, I wanted to go with a non-anniversary based recommendation. And so I'm going to be recommending the Hellboy series of comic books. I've read the first 4 or 5 volumes by Mike Mignola, who is the writer and artist for the primary Hellboy world. I think some other artists and writers have gotten in on the various... It's kind of an expanded universe at this point. I'm not sure how huge it gets, but I know there's different series of people. But the reason I'm recommending Hellboy is 1, because they're always good comics. 2, it's getting into fall, like you were saying, so something a little like... I'm going to say horror light.
It's like not, you don't want to call it spooky, but it's not like Happy Bright Summer.
No, I'm not like terrified reading it, but it's like, oh, this is tense and it's dark and they're fighting, kind of the big monsters, the Lovecraftian style beasts and all that. But I think they're a very enjoyable series if you're looking for something that's kind of superhero adjacent without being too tongue-in-cheek about how it's not like a superhero book. And the reason I'm recommending these is because a Kickstarter just closed for a Hellboy tabletop role-playing game in the D&D 5th edition system. And I kickstarted it, so I'm very excited to get that when they're done developing it. Just at the lowest level. I always like getting these kind of different RPGs and different modules and settings for things, because you can often get in on a Kickstarter for like $10 and get the digital version, which is how I play a lot of my RPGs anyway. So I'm very excited about that. It's being developed by Mantic Games, who also developed a cooperative Hellboy board game a couple years back that looks pretty interesting. And so they're currently working on a D&D systemized Hellboy setting.
I feel like Hellboy is a really cool world. I know my scope of Hellboy is very, very small, pretty much limited to like the first comic and the first movie, but I love it. It's a really cool world of what I know, and so I feel like that's going to be a really neat RPG tabletop to explore and play as these different creatures and in this cool
agents
setting
of the BPRD.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, I do want to mention one thing, is that I know there was a bit of a pushback that I saw, at least on social media, from big tabletop role-playing fans, because they are developing this for the kind of the unofficial D&D system, because there's a lot of other tabletop role-playing systems out there, and a lot of the other ones focus more on tone and different genres and actual role-playing, whereas D&D can be a little bit more on the combat heavy and not always nailing the genre of the things it's trying to interpret. That being said, it's also the system I'm most familiar with. It's the one I've taught friends to play, and it's also the most popular one, seeing as it's through a subsidiary owned by Hasbro. So I'm a little torn on the it'd be nice to see it on a more independent and open sourcey kind of RPG system, but I'm not mad that it's coming to 5th edition, because it's like, okay, it's gonna be easy for me to learn it. And this is not actually the first attempt at Hellboy role-playing, because I do have a source book on my shelf for the GURPS system.
What is GURPS? That sounds like a stomach issue or an animal noise.
Yes. So the GURPS system is the... Hold on.
I just can't get over the fact that it's called
GURPS.
it's
powered by GURPS.
That's the weirdest. Please tell me it's like a legitimate acronym and not like...
It is.
Okay.
I just can't remember what it is. It's oh man.
Good underlings
no,
role play sadly.
I think it's the General Universal Role Playing System.
That makes sense. That spells GURPS.
Something like that. I think it's Universal Role Playing System, and I don't know what the G stands for.
Global? That kind of is universal.
What is GURPS? Page 14.
We should make our own role-playing system. That's the PERPS. The Peter Erin role-playing system. Powered by PERPS. Or powered by EPRAs. Or powered by HERPS, the Hanneman Universal Role-Playing System. Oh, GURPS is the generic universal role-playing system.
Was it developed by Steve Jackson?
It was. It was first published in 1986.
Yeah. Steve Jackson getting a mention in our actually last episode of the podcast because he created Sorcery, which was one of the many inspirations for Dark Souls.
I honestly was like, wait, I've never heard this name. What did we talk about that I forgot? I wasn't
You
on
weren't
the last
on that episode
of the podcast.
So yeah, this is not the first time Hellboy's had a role-playing game, but however, I don't know how popular this was. I just remember seeing this book once and being like, oh, that's neat, and buying it. So I've never seen it or heard of it anywhere else. But yeah, Hellboy will eventually be D&D-ified, and I suggest you go read it because it's a fun comic, and watch the first 2 movies because those are pretty good movies.
That's all we have for this week's Friday Reads. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. You can also find all of our posts and past episodes at gameandread.wordpress.com.
You can find me on social media. My Twitter handle is @GameandRead, and my Instagram handle is now also @GameandRead for all of your Game and Read related tweets and Instagrams.
I am on Twitter @BookishTextPat and on Instagram @A-Tale-of-Two-Shelves.
Our intro music was written and performed by Avery Murchison. There's a link to his Bandcamp in the episode description.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Game and Read.